Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. It is Thursday, December the 7th, 2017, and as we inch ever closer to a big fat guy with a beard sliding down the non-existent chimneys of most condominiums that people live in 2017, we have another episode of the Technical Alpha Podcast, ripe for the watching live, as the Video Game Awards are also happening right now. So no pressure. It's a two-man show. Jeff is currently trying on 50 Shades of Under Armour.
The only two that matter, though.
This is true. This is very true. But he's off in Never Neverland right now, doing that with Under Armour. He's gonna be the next Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, you know? He's gonna have his own line, I think. You know,
Jeff the Pebble Johnston.
Yes, it'll be the Pebble, and instead of the bull, it'll just be like a calf. I think it'll work great.
Maybe a milking cow, a nice sturdy milking cow.
I enjoy the fact that the webcam, not for you, but the webcam on the stream. Apparently, I'm jaundice. I've just, this is a recent development. I have become jaundice. I'm living in some faraway time where that was actually something that you could pull off without living in a third world country. Let me back off on this. I'm either jaundice or invisible, so we're going to go with a combination of the two. But ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all doing well, and that you had a lovely last week, as we do ramp ever closer to what many people celebrate the most expensive time of the year. For many folks. Panic, how was your week?
Going along. Had a holiday party yesterday. Been gaming, getting some stuff packed up, and overall enjoying the slow pace week.
Slow pace is great.
Yeah, we're going into like our code freeze at work like next week, so everything's just kind of slowing down, and they're like, all right, you can work on stuff that's been packed up for over a year.
So this is the we're not going to take on any new projects. This is time to try and buff out the crap before the end of the year.
It's like, hey, you know that amazing thing that you wanted to build but never had time? Yeah, don't work on that. Just do all the tech stuff. You know that whole tech debt thing we were talking about like a week or two ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to start paying that shit back in like the next month. That's all you get.
It's the fun time.
Yeah.
I didn't have any of that. I basically, my week has been mod Oblivion and play Oblivion.
Yeah, I've noticed you've been in Oblivion.
That's been my week. I had a random it just popped into my head. It was just a couple weeks ago, and it was just like, you know what, Oblivion. I tried. Brian and I tried playing it last year. I couldn't get the mods to work without the game crashing once every 3 minutes. But I was like, you know, that can't. I was obviously doing something horribly wrong. for that to be. I mean, I know Oblivion's unstable, but it's not that unstable. So I was like, you know what? Let's see what happens if I go back and give her a go. And it was just kind of something for me to do when I was off stream, and it turned out that everything looked so good and ran so well. I was like, well, I might as well, play it, and it does extraordinarily well on my stream. So more Oblivion coming.
Well.
Yeah, look, the numbers just up. So we're gonna keep playing some Oblivion. It's weird. You never know, because you forget sometimes, or I forget sometimes as a streamer, that despite the fact that a game, might have 0 people watching it, or like 5 people watching it at any given time, people can follow individual games on Twitch. And I forget about that feature all the time, because I myself definitely don't use that feature. So, despite the fact that there was only like 2 people and a dog, when I was going live with Oblivion, I ended up with, on the first day, I had 180 people on the stream, which is twice my normal number anyway, these days. And the follower counts, or when you look at the stat page for Twitch and who's coming in through the browse page, I was like, what the fuck? How is that even possible? There's nobody on the browse page. How could that even happen? And then it dawned on me that people use the follow game feature. And so, yeah, that's been kind of fun. But yeah, I've been having a good time with it anyway. I feel like I'm not actually missing anything in the gaming world, particularly at the moment. I have a backlog of stuff to review, to say the least, but as far as the usual suspects, everything seems to be just kind of whatever. And we're going to be talking more about that. I know that we've talked about the same 3 games now for like almost a month straight.
Yep.
We touched on this last podcast as well, but the fact of the matter is, because we're coming up on the end of the year, the only things that are happening right now are a couple of companies screwing the pooch royally on a weekly basis, and Game of the Year contention. And that's like the only things.
They just keep updating and keep digging the holes.
Yeah, so, we have some stuff that's not necessarily directly tied to that to talk about this week, but we do totally still also have some of that stuff to update for you guys. The first one is that EA is apparently considering just scrapping microtransactions altogether.
So, and this wasn't from CEO Wilson. This was from the CFO, Jorgensen, or I don't even know what his name is anymore.
Some Swedish guy.
Yeah, the Swedish, the IKEA guy. He pretty much came out and said that we're reevaluating if microtransactions and how that's going to come into play. If it is, this is kind of them coming back off of it's coming back definitely into yeah, we're not really sure. So personally, I don't necessarily think that's going to be a good thing, because I feel like EA is just going to be like, all right, we made our money on box sales. Move on to the next Star Wars game and just be done with it.
Yeah, I mean, if they, you have to imagine that some of the stuff that we talked about last week, where we discussed that random governments at random various levels of government around the world, like we had some.
Not a good place to be when that starts happening.
Hawaii, and then there was like the one over in Europe, which Belgium or something was doing it, and just all over the place. But when that stuff starts to pop up, you don't really want to maybe risk holding out to see how that plays out. You might want to be a bit proactive. And so maybe this is them being proactive. The one thing I'm most interested in is how this, if at all, affects their FIFA franchise, because that's where like half of their revenue is
it's like
EA's
80% of their revenue.
Yeah, it's like FIFA's what are they called? FIFA's
Ultimate Team.
Ultimate Team, that's it. So if they backpedal on that stuff, they're gonna have to find a different route for revenue, or their stock price is gonna just crash, and not insignificantly crash either. Yeah. I mean, we've seen in the last month or so they dropped 10% in November, and they dropped another like what was it, another billion or something the other.
Oh my god, like their stock price is, I think they were at 100 the other day. I haven't even checked today, like where their numbers have been. But yeah, they took a hit on their market cap. The reasoning, they've still been getting negative press on this. And at this point, there is a possibility that they might lose their exclusivity license. There's a pretty sizable petition out there that's got over 100-something thousand signatures.
For Star Wars.
Yeah, to lose the exclusivity on the Star Wars license, and that's going to hit them even harder. And Disney is hyper focused on this right now. It's a big problem for them. So we'll see what happens. I'm curious what EA's solution is. They've been putting out patches and they've been doing some updates. They had some really stupid bugs in the progression system, like it came out that you could open a loot box. They would award you crafting material, like the crafting part things, which are already rare and hard to come by. And you wouldn't actually get awarded them. You'd get like an error and it would never award the crafting pieces to you.
What?
So it would be like, hey, you got 5 crafting pieces, and people were like going back and like, no, it didn't actually give me the 5 crafting pieces.
Oh no.
So, you know, that they've been getting hits there, but you know, at the same time they've been increasing. It's like they fix one thing and then something else lights on fire.
Yeah.
With the progression system. So
yeah, it's all a mess one way or another for EA, and it's not just central to the Star Wars issue. I mean, like we just mentioned, FIFA is the big problem here. It's the one that nobody's talking about yet, but if they start to mess around with their use of microtransactions, then FIFA is going to be where they get hit the hardest, and by a very significant margin.
That's why they're trying to like back off some of this stuff, because they realize that if someone like goes and actually like looks at the rest of the stuff that EA's been doing, and they see, hey, this is where a lot of their income is, they're going to be, you know, it's a risk.
Well, they're overvalued, but somehow the people investing in them have not figured out yet that the company is overvalued.
I actually can't comment too much on that. I really can't. So.
No, I understand. No, I get why you can't comment on it, but I will comment on it. And
fair enough.
People miraculously, for one reason or another, haven't figured out that the company is overvalued. So the only thing that's going to happen now, there's only two scenarios I can think of right now. There are a handful of major investors in EA that are aware of this and are going to short the ever-living fuck out of EA in the coming months to the sometime in the next calendar year, end of 2018, when most of these changes are going to be announced, and make an absolute butt-fuck load of money. Or they're all actually retarded. There's the only two options that we have here, is that they are not researching the companies they're investing in, period, full stop, or they know it's the case, but they're along with the people that don't know the information, and they know it's eventually going to happen, and they're going to short in a window of time where they get to make some money back. Either way, EA is going to lose a lot of money. One way or another, no matter how they tackle this problem, I can't personally see a route that they can take as a company without taking a significant hit because of the pillar that is FIFA. Like, if they're just not divested. They've got nothing else. It's FIFA, and then like the next closest pillar is like a fucking footnote somewhere on their financial line. So I don't know how they do it. It'll be fun to watch. I feel sorry for some of the other companies that are under the EA umbrella right now, because they're going to be scapegoats 300% on it, and we've already seen them shutting down other devs underneath their umbrella to begin with. So I wouldn't be shocked.
Games. Studios go to die.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see some more of that. So, yeah, so that's happening. Destiny also continues. Just when you think that we've hit the bottom for Destiny, Bungie finds a new low. I don't know if you wanted to take that. I was just waiting for you to take that from me.
No, I don't know. You like the way you did it. It's like he's got something. No. So pretty much what happened is with Curse of the Osiris. And again, I'm not the expert on this. I was talking to some people earlier today who were like really upset about it.
I read a bunch about it too.
Yeah, pretty much with Curse of the Osiris, Destiny actually pay gated the content for the DLC. It used to be like people could still play the content and you'd have the full pool of players to be able to play it, but like they wouldn't necessarily be able to collect the loot or get some of the rewards and stuff. But yeah, no, you just don't get access to it. So what ends up happening is you have the have and have not people, which I'm not entirely against, but it just makes the player pool smaller. and you get a lot of like fragmentation later on as stuff comes out, and it just gets messy for like matchmaking and stuff.
Well, here's where the biggest complaint lies, is it's not necessarily that they're fragmenting the base based on content that you purchase, right? Because I don't think many people complain about that. I think they understand that it's operating under an MMO structure instead of a monthly fee. Once every few months, you're going to pay, 20, 30, whatever for the next chunk of content. Yeah. But the problem is they changed the content that was available in the vanilla, base game.
Oh, I didn't realize that part.
So they basically increased the level in which requirements there, and so you're actually, even though you were previously getting into these things, I think the way that it works is because they increased it to kind of scale with the content that's come in, you can technically still do it, but you can't physically get the leveled gear to be able to truly complete it. And if you do, you're like some sort of fucking savant god because you have to overcome, your gear at that point. So
then on top of that, though, with the whole savant level of getting the gear, some of the new stuff and some of the other stuff that they've introduced actually breaks and is not balanced against like PvP stuff. Like I think there's like this Prometheus lens gun people have been talking about. It's completely and utterly broken in like PvP mode. So it's like people are now getting punished for not having certain things, or they're like they just didn't balance the new stuff. So it's like kind of showing that it's a little bit minorly pay to win in a sense, because like they just haven't balanced it. They're like, oh yeah, no, if you get this thing, you can get this amazing gun that's going to make you completely OP. So it's kind of like just showing that they're not really caring about balance or like.
And I've seen a lot of complaints about that gun too. Yeah. Like it's been the two complaints I've seen were for those two things. For people playing the PvP, it's, are you friggin' kidding me? This thing is like there's no playtesting required here. It didn't need to be released into the wild. Anyone with a head screwed on their shoulders could have discovered that this gun was going to be completely broken, which tells you pretty much immediately that they're well aware of it, and they're doing it for people to move up and have a chance to have that weapon. That's basically what they're doing. Which again,
it was right after they said, "Hey, we're gonna try harder to follow up on your feedback." You're like, seriously, guys?
Yeah.
Like this is what you did.
I don't really even have a problem with that necessarily. If they want to break their PvP, fucking go nuts. I don't think Destiny 2's PvP is good to begin with, so it's kind of whatever. The problem for me, the biggest problem for me here is the fact that they gated original content, end game content that people had available to them. That's not cool. You're basically just taking away something somebody already paid money for. You're not in an MMO monthly subscription structure where somebody can only play if they're paying $15 per month. You're releasing this stuff in DLC packs that gate based on DLC, but the new DLC should not be modifying the content that came previously.
Like backport things, yeah.
Exactly. If you're going to do that, you might as well just live in a truly MMO, revenue structure where you charge $15 a month and just be fucking done with it. But they're not doing that, so that's probably the biggest issue here, and it will be up to Bungie to obviously to see just how much they respond to this, because the community again is quite upset about it. And
it's been surprisingly vocal.
It's been in vogue for companies to respond or at least show that they are sort of responding to community feedback. So that will be definitely something to keep an eye on as well. Speaking of company feedback, and
is this the one I think it is? Or are you going off the list I gave you?
Sort of. We're gonna dump into. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna inject a different one here before we get to that.
Okay.
I forgot to put it in the list on Twitch here, but it doesn't much matter. We're gonna skirt into Patreon is the next one we're gonna talk about, because feedback is very real for this one. So, for those of you listening, 1 in 4 of you are a Patreon member, and that's fucking incredible. That is an
really
insane
high
ratio to have.
awesome.
And we love each and every fucking one of you because we don't have a massive show, but we are pulling in, you know, phenomenal margins for the size.
We're punching in a few weight classes higher than we should be.
Exactly.
We completely acknowledge that's because of how awesome you guys are.
You're killing it. So when stuff changes on Patreon, it can either be good or bad for us because we want to be able to provide a opportunity for you guys to support us as best as humanly possible and as fair as humanly possible, which is why we went with Patreon to begin with when we started this podcast, is that it made the most sense for their deliverables that they had on deck and the structures of payment that they had for a podcast environment made great sense. So, just in the last 24 hours or so, Patreon has announced that they are changing the way that their payment structure works, entirely overhauled, and they're spinning it in like they're not fooling anyone, but they're spinning it in a way where they're saying that they always want to put the content creators first, which is complete horseshit.
This is the thing that bugged me about it, right? And again, I got an email about this earlier. I was reading it literally at work, and I was groaning while I was reading it. I'm sure, Adam, you got the same one.
Yeah.
And they were explaining out that, you know, based on fees and stuff that get charged, the content creators are effectively not necessarily getting all the money. So everyone kind of acknowledges that. So then they said, hey, we're going to ensure that the content creators always get 95% of what we give them. But I was like sitting there and thinking,
somebody has to pay for it.
I'm like, those fees aren't coming from you, though. Those fees are like coming from like PayPal or whatever else. So like when you pay out the money, someone else is already taking like a middleman cut, which is like, okay, fine, I get that. But what they're doing is they're saying they're going to give us the 95%, but then they're charging you guys, the patron, like what those fee amounts kind of average out. And I was like, it's like what, 2.9% and 35 cents or something.
It's something along those lines. Yeah.
And I was sitting there and I'm like, and Adam, you might have a different opinion on this, but as like a creator, I kind of understand where my patrons are coming from, where they want to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, if there's fees and stuff associated with it, yeah, just let that happen in the back end. That's fine if I don't get the full amount that's shown on there, right?
Yeah.
It sucks, but you know, it's kind of a nature of, you know, payment processing.
Yeah.
But Patreon's kind of like, you know what? No, we're going to charge the patrons. We're going to actually charge them more. And I'm like, that's kind of messed up because like they're already doing above and beyond. They're putting in the work. They're putting in the effort. They work hard for their money. And, you know, they want to give us like a contribution. Don't hit them up for more money. And then don't frame it as if you're trying to do something for the content creators. I feel like that's kind of like disingenuous because like we know PayPal's still going to get their fee and Patreon's still going to be paying. We're still going to be not necessarily getting that full amount. So like, I don't know. It just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know how like you personally felt when you read it.
Well, that's pretty much how everyone views this. I haven't read a single response to this that has been any different than that because that's just how it is. They effectively, Patreon has taken the fact that they have processing fees, shifted it off of themselves, and by proxy shifting it off of the content creators and putting it onto the patrons, while also still taking a 5% flat cut of the Patreon creators' income. So they have, while they have technically reduced the amount of a cut taken from the creators, they have increased the amount of money that they make on every pledge for themselves.
They really haven't, though, because if you think about it, like, yeah, they take out their fees and everything, but when they pay out to us, we still get that PayPal fee hit, right?
No.
Oh.
Well, when we because on PayPal when we transfer out of there, we're not getting hit for fees. No. The
when
fees,
they transfer to
the fees involved previously were fees that we would cover based on a patron signing up and going through that transactional fee, because just the transaction of taking the monthly stuff in and out of pay, like, this is nothing, because the amounts are so large. But if you're doing like these $1, $5, $50 en masse across the website, then the fees add up. So they were shifting those fees onto the content,
it back onto the person.
The content creators. But now they're shifting it onto the payers.
That's messed up.
Okay, so let me put this into frame further. So for those of you who are a supporter of any content creator on Patreon, and odds are if you're supporting us, you're probably supporting one or two or more other people. That's just kind of the market in which Patreon operates. If somebody supports one, odds are they're supporting more than one. If you're providing, let's say, $20 and higher, this is not going to affect you particularly huge amounts. But if you're in the $1 to $10, let's say, range, or more specifically, let's say, more drastically, let's say $1 to $5, you're in that range, and you're giving that to multiple creators, that's going to add up for people that are supporting multiple Patreon pages on the site. And furthermore, it almost renders dollar club type stuff frivolous. It almost makes it useless.
I feel like Patreon is doing this intentionally so they can knock out all those like low tier, because effectively, if a $1 donation actually costs like $1.40 or something, that's going to reduce the number of people contributing at that tier by a substantial margin, and it's going to reduce the cost for Patreon because they're going to have much less of those coming in, and it's like.
But why? It's not reducing the cost for Patreon at all, though, because we were covering the fees.
No, but usually when you're on the business, when you're a business and you're doing large scale processing, the far side processor will, in addition to normal fees, will usually give discounts to the facilitator based on like the number of transactions you do, and you get less incentive depending. It's like bucketed.
No, I get you, but normally volume reduces the fees associated with it. So lower end Patreon pledges at the levels in which Jim Sterling only has one tier and it's $1.
Yeah.
And he's got
impact him
13,000 fucking like endless number of people. Now that doesn't mean that everyone that's involved with him is giving $1. That's just the lowest amount that like they can give. Like
he just
for
has
example,
the one tier that says it's $1. You get whatever tier, and then you can say I want this tier, but I'll give more.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I just want this, but I'll give more than the $1. So there are people obviously giving more than $1 for him because you can just easily see based on the number of people he has and the amount of money he makes every month. But it does reduces for everyone involved. It just fucks everyone at that point, except for Patreon. And so somebody put a pretty reasonable thread together on Twitter, and I retweeted it earlier, examining why they think this is happening. And essentially it comes down to the fact that Patreon has taken on, I think they're on Series C or D at this point in funding.
One of the big ones, yeah.
And they took in like 40 million, 30 million, 40 million in this last round. In the last year, they've doubled the size of the company. And so at this point, odds are, if you get to Series D or whatever, the percentage left of your company that you actually own is tiny. It's a couple of the owners at the top have a chunk, and then that's the show. They have a small percentage, and then it's divvied up amongst investors at that point. And so the investors at that point have a really big voice, and they say, "Look, we just gave you all this money. We still have a timeline in which we want to get our money back and start making money on our investment. So you need to start coming up with ways to increase this revenue."
This fee structure and this whole like setup reads to me like a venture capitalist or someone who came in or is now on the board came in and said, "This is how we have to do this. This is how we're going to make your money back. This is how we're going to pitch it. This is how we're going to put it out. And you guys need to raise X dollars or we're going to have a problem."
Yeah, exactly. And you know, this isn't a an uncommon situation for companies of Patreon size to you know to be caught up in. A lot of people see dollar signs and they just run wild. If Patreon
it's like
had
a huge source, like for venture capitalists looking at this, they're saying,
oh yeah,
"Oh, there's a lot of people just giving money. How do I get a cut of that money? I want a piece of that action."
now the really interesting part about this whole thing is if you read that thread, they also go into Patreon's, you know, how much money Patreon generates in revenue, you know, on a yearly basis versus how much money they've raised, and then the ratio. So when you're looking at venture capitalists coming in and, excuse me, giving you capital, generally it's done on a pretty tried and true. You know, we're gonna give you at most upwards of, let's say, what was it, 20 times, it's between 10 and 20 times your revenue is the valuation of your company on a good day, and you only get towards the top end of that if you're like a AAA fucking diamond in the rough.
Yeah, what they really want to see. And again, I'm not like fully a startup person. I just have a lot of people in this space that I know. But from my understanding, what they mainly care about is one, your total revenue.
Yeah.
What your burn is, like how much you're spending.
Yep.
Which is
your
obviously
margins.
Just like your net. But
Yeah.
then on top of that, they want to see like actual cash flow.
Yep.
Like what's coming in, and then how you're leveraging that. Like, are you able to turn $1 in? Like the main ratio is when you get $1 in, how much can you turn that dollar into?
Yep.
Right. So
it's all based on margins. They want to see good margins, and if they don't see good margins, they generally walk. And so it's a very rare. I mean,
VC contracts have some pretty vicious clauses in them.
Oh, is gnarly. I've only been part of 4 different meetings for VCs, and they were the most terrifying fucking meetings of my entire life. Because they're savage, and for good reason. They're about to dump millions of dollars into a product. They need to be savage, because why else would they be comfortable with investing all this money?
This is actually interesting because my cousin, he built a startup from scratch, sold it recently and has transitioned over, but he's actually doing like a whole podcast vlog series about his whole process, which he's just launched. So Coincidentally, no. The only reason I brought it up is it's literally on topic, but like he actually is going to talk about like all of this like crazy stuff from like raising funds to like how stressful it is when you're in the when you're the company and you're like, oh shit, we need more money and we're burning, like we have a lot of revenue, but we had
burning
to grow
it like crazy,
and it's like we're literally lighting money on fire to keep the doors open. Gotta do another round. Oh shit, what am I gonna have to sell this time?
Yep.
What of my soul am I gonna give away? So
it is. It's
an interesting cutthroat space.
It is. It's super crazy. And so when you get a situation like Patreon, if you look at the revenue brought in versus how much money they've raised, they're getting twice as much as what usually the highest end in terms of a ratio of revenue to money invested than most any other startup ever.
Their job is literally, we will take other people's money to like shuffle it around, and then we take a little piece. So they're like a little middleman payment processor.
Exactly.
So
which
venture capital looks at that, it's like, oh, there's money coming in. I can easily get a piece of that.
Easy. So it's a really interesting situation. I think that they would be wise to pay attention to the feedback, because
it ain't good.
Patreon is in a unique position where there's really nobody else challenging them right now. On the streamer side,
Kickstarter is going to come out soon.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. So right now, in the year 2017, December 7th, there's not really much immediately pressuring them, and so they're kind of free to do some of this fuckery to a degree. However, I mean, there's things that exist like Game Wisp, because Game Wisp is going nowhere. They're going to tread water from now until the end of time. They'll have like their little tiny pocket carved out, and eventually somebody will get tired of running the company, sell it off, and it'll be whatever. But as far as real, honest to goodness competitors for Patreon, right now they don't exist, but they're coming. And like you just mentioned, probably the one that will garner the most attention is the one from Kickstarter. And while Kickstarter has had a bit of a roller coaster of a ride in terms of trust from people, I think that there's still going to be a lot of interest in it because Kickstarter has matured.
Yeah, Kickstarter makes money for the right kind of products now, and they know what they are, and the most important part, especially that crowdfunding in general, not just for Kickstarter, is people are a lot more aware of what they're getting into, so they're not like, the expectations are a lot better. Like when I kickstart something, yeah, I know I'm probably not going to get it on time. I know it might not even ever show up. I know I'm kind of investing in like an idea.
Yeah.
Hell, my brother kickstarted a birthday gift for me from like 2 or 3 years ago, and I still haven't gotten it. And it's like literally just a lamp. And every year he's just like, "It's on its way, bro. Soon.
Eventually,
soon." And he'll periodically just send me the update, and I'm like, "All right, so this lamp that they were going to manufacture is completely different, and like it looks the same, but it's like actually completely different manufacturing." So it's like, okay,
that's amazing.
Maybe I'll get it eventually.
That's amazing. But yeah, so there's Kickstarter, almost anyone can come into the space, and it's not going to be long before somebody does because of the route that YouTube has been taking and Twitch and other platforms. There's so many content creators, and there's a constant demand for new content and consistent content, and there's going to have to be ways for people to monetize themselves because advertisements sure as shit aren't doing it. So I think the guy that wrote that thread also mentioned if PayPal wanted to do it, PayPal could come in and do something like this because they're already the ones. They're the middleman.
Subscriptions for people already.
They're the middleman for the middleman. So why wouldn't they cut the other middleman out and just do it themselves and reap all of the benefits, right? They'd be able to provide a lower transaction fee because they are the transaction provider to begin with. And
they already have that relationship with the card providers. They have it all.
It's all in
out.
place.
It's all there.
So they just split off a portion of the company, or bring in some new hires, and slap together the website bones, and the biggest part of the project's done because it's PayPal. So that's a very real possibility as well. So right now, I think it would be wise for Patreon to listen to the community and rethink this strategy. Because they don't even, and this is a very important point, we'll leave it at this before moving on to the next topic, but this is a very important point. They don't even allow the content creators to take on the transaction fees. So there's no checkbox.
I don't know about you guys, but I would gladly just take that fee on for everyone who supports us.
Well, that's the idea. So everyone is saying, okay, this is fine, right? But let us choose to take on the fees for the people that are supporting us. Because that's how the systems worked before, and we would rather take on the cut than dump it onto.
Don't try to pitch it like you're helping content creators.
No, because
you're
you're not.
You guys just want your cut. Let us make that. If you want to really help us, then let us make that decision.
Exactly. I mean, and you see this with donation services for streamers.
Oh, yeah,
where at the bottom there's a checkbox. Do you want to cover the fees, or do you want to hand that off to the streamer and off to the races? But for this Patreon thing specifically, they don't even let us choose that. So it's a crazy situation. We will evaluate based on the changes made in pledges that you guys make, whether or not we keep certain tiers open and how we're going to have to reorganize based on what Patreon does here in the next couple of months. So we'll try and keep you in the loop on that, but don't feel like you're doing something wrong if you can't afford to be with us on Patreon anymore. Like, we understand Patreon is the one at fault here, and we appreciate those who stick with us or move up a tier to avoid the fees or whatever it is that you're looking to do.
Or even if you move on, we completely get it.
We get it. It's cool. Like, we're not happy with it. We don't have, I just explained, we don't have a choice in the matter, unfortunately, and there are no other platforms that suit this space, like we just said as well, at the moment. So we'll just take it a day at a time, and hopefully you guys ride it out with us as best as possible. Oh, where were we in this? Oh, right. Also, community feedback, sort of. The WCS did some cool stuff just recently. Remember back when you said that the community team at Blizzard was just getting better and better? And I didn't believe you?
Every year. Like, this has been every year since 2013. And as many of you don't know, I actually, like, very verbally left the StarCraft community, like, a couple of months ago, saying I'm absolutely, like, sick of how they deal with the community.
Yeah.
Even though they've been improving, I'm kind of sick of it at this point. And they were improving, and then today happened. So I've had verbal words and Twitter battles with people in charge of the esports team and the planning team at Blizzard. And I've said not nice things, which I know is hard for people to believe from me, but always very professionally. But one of the problems that they've been having is, one, they release their information really late. And then two, they're like a bull in a china shop when it comes to scheduling. So this year, it's actually the worst it's ever been in terms of the damage they kind of caused. But they've been having this problem for a very long time. So what happens is the season ends at BlizzCon in like November. And that's great. You have a couple of months, but the problem is Blizzard, for some reason, despite being a massive company, they don't plan anything out in advance. So usually when people plan events or leagues or large scale year-long events with multiple components, you need lead time to book flights, set up sponsors, set up travel, set up location, and do all of this stuff, right? Blizzard doesn't really plan any of this stuff, and they don't tell people up until like a week beforehand. So what ended up happening was, we've got a ton of stuff lined up from like November through December into January and whatever, right? And I'm not even talking like small, like this impacts everyone from like small community organizations to larger ones like Base Trade TV, who like plan out events with like sponsors and stuff with prize pools, to other like local organizations which plan big fly-in tournaments for things. In like LAN centers, all the way up to Intel Extreme Masters.
Yeah.
Right? So these guys, they have to plan out these events. And, there's this like, the community's got this whole calendar set up internally for the community where like all the organizers and everything can go in and be like, hey, there's this open weekend here. We want to do this event here. And then kind of all the casters and talent and stuff, they do this all behind the scenes. They organize this themselves so they can so that they don't step on each other, because the StarCraft community knows there isn't a ton of viewers here. So you know what? We don't want to cannibalize each other. Let's support each other and make sure that there's always content to watch, always something going on. So like they plan this schedule very meticulously to make sure that, a base trade tournament doesn't, override like a Take TV tournament, doesn't conflict with qualifiers for the Intel Extreme Masters and all of this stuff. So what happened was there's like a new sponsor tournament from Base Trade going on one day, and then like another day later there's a bunch of events going on from different organizations. And on top of that, casters are already booked to fly off to these different events and stuff to like cast live or do whatever, right? For all of these different things. And Blizzard comes in and is just like, hey guys, WCS qualifiers, same time as IEM. Oh yeah. Also, it's during the Star Wars opening weekend, so if you made plans for that, fuck you too.
I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so.
It's like, come on, guys. Blizzard even has access to this calendar. They just probably just like, yeah, whatever. We don't care. We're not even going to look at it. We want this weekend. That's what it is.
You know what Blizzard cares about right now? Overwatch League. That's what Blizzard cares about.
It gets even better. The announcement for the WCS qualifiers said, hey, details are still pending. We haven't worked everything out. We'll get back to you. Like, guys, this stuff's in a week. Like, seriously? You can't get that shit together? And I'm like, I responded back to them, and I'm like, seriously, guys? It's been years. Like, the fact that you guys are not, like, looking or even, like, discussing any of this stuff, like, internally, and being like, hey, why do we keep having community backlash and problems every year with all of this stuff? Like, why? Like, are they like the project managers and the analysts and the schedule should all be looking at like, why is this getting like a bigger problem every year? Is there something we could be doing better?
How just out of curiosity, because I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't watched the WCS in a good long time. How big of a production at this point is WCS?
It's not as huge as it used to be. So Blizzard will do qualifiers, like online qualifiers, and then they'll have some live qualifiers. And then what they'll do is they'll have circuit events like at like DreamHack or at like IEM and stuff that will give you WCS points. They'll also have some of their own WCS events throughout the thing. And then at the end of the year, you have the big championship at BlizzCon.
Okay.
But they've kind of farmed it out to the other bigger providers so that those big events can give WCS points. And then they have like I think
it's like the FedEx Cup.
Yeah,
in golf,
much.
basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
To make it as white as humanly possible.
They haven't like even published too many. They're kind of carrying over a lot of the stuff from 2017, but apparently they've like made changes or haven't been clear about some stuff already. And it's just like, guys, come on, like this is stuff you could have had worked out months ago.
I just asked that question because I'm trying to see in my mind, what kind of team that Blizzard would have, and I use the word team loosely here because a team necessitates more than one person, and sometimes I feel like there's not more than one person doing this at Blizzard. But for StarCraft's side, what kind of manpower they put on this, and then who they put on this, because Blizzard in the past hasn't been, for as involved and as loving, I'll put in quotation marks, of community content as the higher-ups at Blizzard StarCraft division have been for years. They have done, and I'm not going to say they and say all of them because it's not necessarily,
there's a disconnect.
It's not necessarily their decision as to who's doing this stuff, but whoever is deciding it, we'll say this because I don't know, whoever's deciding it is picking or has been picking for a long time people that have no clue about the StarCraft community at any juncture in the StarCraft community's lifespan. So, and this goes all the way back to the point where when they flew Jeff out and he was at that dinner, and we're hearing from the guys there, and everyone loves LAGTV content, and then the assistant that put the whole thing together didn't even know who Jeff was. There's just no clue. And yet here he is at this dinner.
It happened at TwitchCon, right? I got invited through other people that I know, and Jeff was there. And the StarCraft people didn't even know Jeff was there, didn't know how to contact him.
No.
They invited people who weren't even at TwitchCon, and they didn't show up. And they're like, and I'm like, why didn't you guys invite Jeff? Like, or MaximusBlack. He's like, oh, we didn't know how to get in touch with him. I'm like,
like okay. How hard is that job, really? I mean, the answer is it's not. And especially now, like if this was 2011 and StarCraft was at its peak and shit was going ham pretty much on a daily basis for StarCraft, that's a much different scenario. Not only that, but the infrastructure for streaming and the production side and the people available for these events and everything, far different. This is a mature space now with a game and a product that is 1/100th the size that it was in 2011 from a tournament and a stream standpoint. And so if you can't find somebody who has the wherewithal to go to a website that is a community created website, it's been around for a very long time, to be the central nervous system of the StarCraft community's tournament structure from the grassroots movement and onward, and look at a fucking calendar where all of the work that you should be doing as the person being paid for this in the first place is done for you. You don't even have to do anything.
Alternatively, you can say, hey, we're planning stuff in roughly this thing. We can't tell you anything about it, but don't do anything on these possible weekends.
You just show up, you look at the calendar, the work is done for you. You don't even have to do anything. And then you say, okay, well, look, shit, this has already been set in stone for a while. WCS, we just plug this in here and let people know months ahead of time, because really everyone else is capable of planning months ahead of time.
Guess what? You know what? Did you know the calendars are very easy to predict for long periods of time into the future.
Really?
Wow.
I had no idea.
No,
I
but
feel like
this is like the hilarious part. Like, and every year they get this huge backlash. And like 2 years ago, like I was like knee deep in it. I was like weighing in, and like a bunch of people were like, "Yeah, keep going at them." And like they responded back with, "Look, it's a lot more complicated in a large corporate structure. There's a lot of processes and things that have to happen. Project management is complicated. It's not something that we expect the layman to understand." And literally, like a bunch of people were like, "Oh shit, Panic is gonna tear them a new one right now." And I'm less like, "Look, you and I both know that's like a BS argument. You can't just claim corporate arguments, because honestly, if this was an actual properly managed corporate project, you would know the budget, you would know the constraints, and you would have your dates 6 months ago."
a long time ago.
Like, you're telling me as a large-scale corporate project manager, you're trying to figure out what you're going to be doing in a month? That means you have failed at your job.
Or 7 days in advance, as we're seeing right now.
Yeah, like, if you don't have your and this was in specifics to the guidelines for how WCS was going to be run for the following year.
Right.
They hadn't even published it yet, and it was like a month before it started. And I was just like, if you don't have your high-level mission statement documents and rules out a month beforehand, that's a huge project failure, because that's stuff that can be worked out, and people are not going to complain if it wasn't as agile and structured for the following year, because it'll be like, hey, look, we set these rules up like 8 months ago, we know things have changed, so we'll take it up for the next following season. That's all you have to do. No, they kind of just like keep pushing it, and it's like a month beforehand. It's like, come on, guys, you've been doing this for years, you have the same problem every year, but you're not growing or learning from your mistakes. You are actually getting worse.
No, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's unfortunate. You want to be able to say positive things about it, but
I wish this wasn't a problem, because there's so much good momentum going on for StarCraft, and just kind of go and like shit on all the community people who work really hard. Like, there's a lot of money in these tournaments, a lot of effort. Like Cheesadelphia, for example, set up like a 3-city circuit, and they were so lucky that Blizzard decided not to shit on them.
Yeah.
But another group, they got like an external who's never done a StarCraft tournament. They're putting in a ton of money, and Blizzard just fucked that over just because they're just like, well. And it's like, come on, guys, don't make it harder for the community.
I mean, now, Joe. Now, that aside, to also book it Star Wars weekend is also just about the dumbest thing that you could possibly do. I mean, you have to understand.
1 star thing a weekend.
Yeah, like you have to understand that the crossover there for people that are going to watch and be involved in here, long time ago. So, I mean, come the fuck on. Like, it's bad. Just stop, Blizzard. Stop.
Be aware.
But wait, there's more, because Blizzard is also in the midst of Overwatch League right now. The preseason is happening, and you wouldn't know that if I didn't tell you, probably because they decided to host this thing on MLG.
I actually agree with their decision for this one.
Okay, I have a feeling I know why you're going to say why you are, but I want to hear what your reasoning behind it is anyway.
So historically, on initial launches and stuff, there tends to be problems and issues and stuff. Blizzard owns MLG, or Activision does, and they have a lot of production staff and experience behind it, and they have the tech platform so they can use it. Now, from my understanding, and again, all of my criticism of this and my acceptance of it completely goes away if this ends up not being true. But from my understanding, it's only for the preseason.
It is currently it is for the preseason before they move the main season on to Twitch, is my understanding.
Yeah. So as long as that holds true, everything I say from here on is valid for me.
Okay.
The reasoning is there's a lot of stuff going on. Like, if you see the arena and you see the setup and everything, there's a lot of new tech and a lot of new stuff that they're doing, and they need to kind of figure out all the production stuff beforehand. So I can see them kind of like limiting it to the MLG scope so that only like the hardcore people will be watching there, and they can go and see like, okay, what kind of bandwidth does this take to put out? Is our production all right? Is our observing all right? Is our stage show going all right? And they don't want to necessarily have that broadcast out to like a massive audience during the preseason where they might get panned or whatever. What I've seen happen is with MLG, they've had the smaller audience. They haven't necessarily had the chat completely available. They haven't had the viewer counts. So people aren't like totally dumbstruing them, and they're actually looking at the production. So like people are like, this is awesome or I can't watch it. That's like what I've seen.
Well, the video player's been busted
Yeah.
as fuck. Like, people just can't physically watch it. So even if there were problems, the problem is that the
I was
MLG
watching
platform.
I was watching yesterday, and it looked amazing for me. But at the same time, they don't have an Android client for the MLG app, so like I couldn't watch it on my Roku or TV. So I was kind of like, all right, that kind of sucks. But with like, I feel like they're doing this as like the dry run in a much more smaller and contained thing that they completely control. Because then when they go out to a larger distribution to Twitch, they can go to Twitch and be like, hey, these problems are ours, and these problems are yours. And it's like very clear. And then when Twitch is like, how do you know these problems are ours? We're like, well, we ran the whole production for a little, for a solid month on our own platform doing this. So we know that, where these are where the gaps are. And once we switch over to you, these are the gaps. So they can kind of hold Twitch a little bit more account and vice versa. So, keeping it in the walled garden just gives them that control initially to make sure that, what they're going. Because again, there's a ton of external people watching this and are passing judgment. So I feel like Blizzard's like, we want to get this right before we blast it out to everyone. So I feel like this is kind of like a beta test.
Yeah. No, I get that's what I thought you were going to say. And I get that. And I think that if this was something that wasn't with the already well-known Overwatch strapped to somebody like Blizzard, and it hasn't already been, shown on Twitch 500,000 times in other tournaments and everything else, and already what I'm going for here is if it wasn't something that was already high fucking profile, which there isn't, you're not going for much more in eSports. Overwatch League is borderline, you don't get much higher profile. There's really only, you could say, maybe one or two others that could go higher than Overwatch League in terms of profile right now. And so I get that reasoning, but the problem is MLG's infrastructure can't handle fucking 4 people watching it at a time without breaking down. So you're getting two sides here. You're getting people who are, here's my reasoning. Like you just said, the only people that are, or ideally, not that this is going to be the case always, but ideally, the only people that are going to see this are the hardcore, right? Mm-hmm. What group is the most likely to be forgiving out of any group? It's the hardcore.
Depends.
So, well, I'm gonna go with 90+% of the time, the hardcore group are going to be the ones that are going to cut you the most slack. And if they aren't, then your reasoning doesn't work anyway, because
that's fair. I had to think about it.
Loop through. So where it shows up, I don't think actually made any damn difference, because the hardcore were going to cut you slack regardless. And for the people that aren't necessarily hardcore but hear about the preseason, and then they go to MLG to watch it, and then MLG is already struggling to show the hardcore people what's going on, they can't even get, and they can't get that to the not hardcore group, then you're still getting fucked. I understand the reasoning, but if I was at the helm there, I would just say, look, guys, this is all new territory. People are going to fuck on you regardless. This thing could go smooth as butter, and people are going to dumpster your ass.
Oh yeah.
You don't need to be worried about that kind of shit. You just go in and you say, look, guys, if something goes wrong, first day, we have put a lot of time into this, but there's a lot of new cogs and a lot of new wheels. And these things will go away in a short period of time, but right now it's just getting hammered out. At the very least, Twitch's infrastructure can at least handle the numbers that want to watch Overwatch League preseason. So you at least eliminate on not entirely, because Twitch still has its own problems, but in the majority, the problems of MLG in terms of their player, their infrastructure, their reach. Like you mentioned with not having like an Android side thing, that all goes away. And then what's the worst case scenario? Because really, if you think about it, what's the worst case scenario that's going to happen here in Overwatch League? The guys out back controlling the fucking camera switchboard goes and cuts to the wrong scene for a second or two, or like somebody says, let's take a look at this replay, and they can't pull up the replay in time, and then the casters have to fill in 45 seconds to a minute of awkward silence. Like, what's really going to happen in the preseason events? And I bet you it's almost going to be next to nothing that would have made a difference.
They got their people on point though. Like I was watching yesterday, and I was actually enjoying it. They like the casters were on point, the analysts were on point, the teams were coming. It was pretty good.
Because again, it's because Overwatch has already been doing these events, for a while. The World Championship thing at BlizzCon went pretty much flawlessly, and the numbers in on that were huge. It's massive. Now, unfortunately, they also fucked up because half the people that were playing in that tournament that everyone wanted to watch aren't in Overwatch League, but that's a totally different problem of Blizzard's entirely.
So the thing that bugged me the most, I was actually looking at the rosters and stuff. I was like super into this, like when I was looking at the rosters and stuff.
Right.
And this bugged me the most, right? They have teams like New York Excelsior, this team, right? I was like looking forward to rooting for my local team.
The shittiest logo of the entire league, by the way.
No, I actually responded. I'm like, I want to love you guys, but I don't know what that logo is telling me here.
It's a cheese
I went
grater.
and looked at the roster. It's all Koreans. They imported in all Koreans.
Why wouldn't they?
And I'm just like, come on, guys, get some local pride there. That's why I'm actually supporting Boston, because Boston is all like North American, European talent. Like they didn't import too many people. Looks like they built like a solid roster. And a lot of the teams are like that. The Shanghai team is all Chinese people, right? The only team I wanted to be all Korean was Seoul, right? But I'm like looking at some of these teams. I'm like, oh, guys, come on. I know you guys want to win, but seriously, you're like going for all Korean people? Like at least get some local representation on these teams.
I don't know how that's going to hurt them or not. It might, people might be like you and be like, look, it's cool to have one or two Koreans on here, but we're just we're like the fake Seoul. We're the faux Seoul right now, and because we're technically New York, but at the same time, nobody on our team can even speak English. So that's a bit silly. But again, also not entirely surprising. And unless the Overwatch League, made restrictions, which would be a shitstorm in and of itself. The problem is there's a massive supply of really good Korean players.
Oh yeah,
and the best are going to end up on Seoul 9 times out of 10, unless a team puts most of their revenue into a single player coming over. It's going to basically be like in hockey where everyone's, paying 1 or 2 people on their team the majority of their cap, and then the rest of the team is just, plebeians.
There was actually like a really cool rule I saw in the league. I didn't realize it was there because the teams have different roster sizes. Like I've seen some teams have 12 players, other teams have like 6. Like they have a variation in between. But you must field every player during the competition.
Oh, okay.
So if you have a roster of 12 throughout the competition, you must
have to rotate
field all of them.
That's cool. That's a cool idea.
It kind of forces you into like, if you have like a weird breakdown of people, you have to like mix and match. You might end up with some off meta stuff. But then it's like, it's strategically, do you want to risk having only 6 players? But those 6 players are consistent then. So I was like looking at it, I'm like, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, that's neat. Yeah. Oh, well, I don't think. There's probably some downsides to that, but
effectively, all the players are subject to having the minimum. Like you have to pay them the minimum salary at least. So
yeah.
It makes it more expensive if you want to field a larger roster.
But yeah, it'll be an interesting thing to watch. But I'm not. I understand the reasoning behind putting it on MLG, but I don't agree with the reasoning at the same time. I think it's just kind of. I think you're like a 6 of one, half a dozen of another. MLG's a dead website. Let's be honest. It was a bad buy for Activision. Maybe they're looking for some corporate write-offs at the end of the year. But you know,
They
that was
effectively
never
just
going to be
wanted
anything.
production staff, but then they never put them to use.
Yeah, so you know, it is what it is. But thankfully, at least at this time, it is still scheduled for, you know, production to be sent over to Twitch for the regular season. In that respect. Where are we now? Let's see. Oh, well, briefly, PUBG map coming up. That's the thing
Should be
that's
tonight,
happening.
isn't it?
Yeah, I think I don't know. Honestly, PUBG's changed their release for tests and everything else so many times that I can't keep track of what their actual schedule is anymore. No idea. But it's soon.jpg and new map. I'm interested if only because they've introduced a Winchester rifle, which is you know, the lever action special. That would be kind of neat.
It is actually the special. Or?
Yeah, well, no, it's the, what do they call it? The Win 9 or something like that. Win 99. Is it
modeled off the special though?
I don't know. I don't know Winchesters enough to tell you. I just know it's a Winchester and it's the lever action Winchester. So I don't know further than that. You can look it up and probably find out pretty soon, or in pretty short order. But the new map is coming. Will be intriguing to see how it performs versus the other map because of the differentiation in you know, number of buildings and proximity for players, because it's a smaller map if I recall correctly. A lot more close quarters combat with that many kind of buildings. So shotguns are going to be, you know, way more in use, I imagine.
Super excited for that.
And
I think this one's also better suited for vaulting when that comes in.
Yeah, well, the map was built when vaulting was being ushered in. So where the old map, they had to retrofit it. This map hasn't had to be retrofitted, so to say. And so of the two maps, that's probably going to be the one that functions better with the vaulting than the original map, at least for a time. PUBG's in an interesting spot because the test servers are so dramatically ahead of the live servers in every respect that I will be interested in how it goes over once it launches. If the time frame still works, because as it stands right now, you have a bunch of people who never play the live servers, who are seeing a product basically tread water. They're not keeping up with every little update. They're not combing through the meticulously reposted, re-edited, redone patch notes and tweets that PUBG cryptically fucking releases once every 6 to 9 hours, and you have to take everything with a grain of salt because it gets retconned just as often as it gets posted. And so, you know, without being a private fucking detective, trying to sort out or suss out what PUBG is, where it's going, when it's coming, and why the live server has tread water for so long, is probably confusing and pissing off a large portion of the player base, and so I wonder how it's going to go over when it does get released, because I think it goes one of two ways. It gets released and it's so much better than the live server that people just stop complaining about shit for a good long while, because it's just so much better that they're like, fuck it, we got this far, whatever.
We did it, boys.
We did it. We made it happen. Or it takes too long to get pushed out and people start to leave because they're just tired of waiting. And, you know, it remains to be seen just what kind of timeline we're looking at with PUBG. I think PUBG's biggest problem right now, other than the fact that its growth rate is definitely its biggest problem to this point, is their management of releasing information. and who is doing
that
the releasing
whole community problem.
Yeah, like the community just keeps cropping up. It just is such a hard thing to tackle.
The year of the community.
Exactly. And we've talked about this before too, where they have the PUBG account, the player unknowns thing by itself gets blown up all the time, and that's not his bag anymore. He handed that shit off to it's like PUBG Battlegrounds or whatever the fucking account is.
Battlegrounds or something.
Then you've got what's her face, Poopy or whatever the fuck her name is, that's technically the spokeswoman, community leader, knife juggler, contortionist,
marketing
waitress,
generalist.
caterer, marketing journalist person.
Generalist, yes.
Yeah, just whatever the fuck she did, and it's confusing because sometimes she'll comment on things, sometimes she doesn't, and I don't even think she's in charge of the Twitter account that's releasing the information. So there's always this odd tonal disconnect in what information is released, and the types of information released are also different. She'll say more in-depth stuff than the main account will, and so unless you're also stalking her, and it's not just because you're a fucking thirsty 18-year-old male into Asian chicks, then you're gonna be missing out on stuff. It's so confusing. They desperately need to figure out a better way of delivering these messages, because if they don't, oh my god, can you imagine? It gets released and it's on Xbox, and now you've opened yourself up to another few million people as a possible player base, and you're trying to still make all this happen the way you're doing it. It gives me the shivers just thinking about it, and I feel bad for her, because people go after her, right? Because she's the one that's the most, she doesn't read like a robot. She has a face. But yet she's not been given full control of the most publicly facing part of the channels of information. So she just gets lit up. And this, I mean, as a side note, to get off of PUBG, this started happening with Twitch and Hassan, who tweeted earlier this week about the fact that he's having a hard time with the community targeting him specifically for stuff that he has no control over, and isn't even necessarily involved with half the time. But because of how Twitch, just like with PUBG, disseminates information, Hassan, who is a lot of people are starting to recognize him as the Twitch employee, the public-facing Twitch employee.
Used to be Gunrun.
Exactly, it used to be Gunrun, and then he almost died at the age of 21, and now he's off doing other crazy shit. But now it's Hassan, and he's getting targeted, and it's because Twitch has a don't ask, don't tell, lip-sealed, borderline Iron Curtain type shit policy as a company, but Hassan is still out there doing battle for them, because if they don't, there's no damage control, and since they see him, they just go after him because he's the one giving them the closest. It's the closest thing to an answer that they're getting, so they just Hassan, and so this is not a PUBG specific problem, but
it's a community specific thing. People have a tendency to witch hunt a lot more, so now they're a lot of companies are having trouble kind of isolating and properly setting up the channels of communication. Also, they're running into a problem of they need to set up lightning rods, and it sucks when you're the lightning rod.
Oh wait, the mute thing is at the bottom of the window and stuff.
1 sec while you do that. I gotta actually put a battery back in.
Okay, I can't even get the mute thing off of or away from your camera. I'd have to. Hey, community Discord people, if you're listening, do me a favor. Do me a favor and change the video conferencing to tile format so that we don't have to use Skype. That would be super awesome. If we could have, there we go. That's close enough for now. But yeah, so that's not, you know, it's not just PUBG's problem, but it's very weird to me that it's happening in the companies that it's happening with, because we're not talking about companies necessarily headed up by a bunch of old white guys. These are young, social media bred companies.
Just because they're social media bred doesn't mean they actually know how to do social media.
No, but you would think that they would have
engagement.
I understand that, but you think they'd have the wherewithal to hire somebody who does, because they would understand the gravity of having proper.
That would mean that they would have to have the self-awareness to acknowledge that they don't know everything. And you're thinking about it and realizing, you know what? Panic is actually right on this one. You know what? How am I going to get a 25, 26, 27-year-old to admit, you know what? I am not actually that great at this, and I should probably hire someone else who is. That's not a self-awareness that most of them have. And
True.
It's not, it's like, it's that whole, like, you're young, immortal, you know everything, the world can't stop you mentality. And while that's admirable at times, sometimes you need to know, be like, yeah, you know what? Maybe we're not doing this right.
The best managers understand that they are the worst at just about everything.
But they can take the hits.
That's generally how it goes. Like, as a manager, the best managers are a jack of all trades, so that they, at a fundamental level, understand the bits and pieces.
Even at a more than a fundamental, like, you should be able to do the job that all your employees do, not necessarily as well as your individual employees.
Yeah.
But, like, if push comes to shove, you should be able to sit down and maybe get through it and work it out.
I think that's true to a degree, but I think a lot of businesses now have gotten so complicated that if you can do all of that, you're not sleeping. So, so I think what I mean by at a fundamental level is you can have a conversation with your employees that you're hiring and understand the words that are coming out of their mouth. And if you can get that far and then understand that while you can technically do a lot of the things that need to be done, there are people that are specialized in these tasks that are going to do it better and faster than you. That's really what, one of the major pillars of being a good manager, and it seems to be severely lacking in a lot of these young startups, is that people just have such a hard time admitting to themselves that they aren't going to be the best at everything in these situations at all times, and that they should, at some point, start to bring in people that are more specialized. It doesn't matter that you walk away from, or mean that you walk away from the company. Yeah. It just means that you're putting people in place to do things that you don't necessarily have to do, because they're going to be better at it than you, and it's going to be better for the company that you technically are towards the top of. So you're not losing anything for doing that. You're gaining in the long run, but it seems to be a difficult thing for sure. I agree. A lot of them just don't have the wherewithal, or perhaps choose to not have the wherewithal to recognize that kind of stuff. But definitely with the community facing stuff, as we just talked about all this stuff so far to this point in the podcast, it all seems to come down to roughly the same thing, where they don't understand what it is that they really want to be doing or need to be doing, and then don't put the people in place to actually make that stuff happen. And I personally find that very weird in the year 2017. I can't fathom how people haven't figured. Wendy's has figured this shit out, for fuck's sake.
Dude, their social media person is friggin' fire. Oh my god.
They need to be paid 6 figures plus just on their social media. Just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
See the Moon Pie one?
Yes.
Recently? That was hysterical. Moon Pie is just like one of those days where you just want to stick a moon pie in the oven and scream into a pillow. Moon Pie, are you okay? No.
It's brilliant. I mean, so like if a fast food company that's been around since the dawn of time can put this shit together, And really, a fast food company. Yes, social media is important. It's not as important as it is for somebody like Twitch or PUBG or somebody in this space. Then somebody's got to be able to figure it out. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. Where should we go from here? Let's see. Oh, Hearthstone expansion launched. No, I don't have much to talk about on this.
I haven't actually. It literally launched today, so I haven't even had a chance to play it. I'm
going to take a shot in the dark on this one. I'm going to say that the game is still broken as fuck.
The dungeon run mode has been getting good reviews, though.
Yeah, I'm going to say that the biggest part about that is the dungeon thing. Whatever they called it, I can't remember. But
I think it might be called Dungeon Run.
Yeah, that is the most positive thing I've seen come out of Hearthstone since it's launched. Full stop.
Yeah.
And for everyone else, that's just playing on the ladder. Guess what? Hearthstone is still shit to play unless you net deck somebody who's already figured out the most efficient decks for the class, and then just grind against the same other 4 or 5 decks if you want to get anywhere near the top, because Blizzard has one of the worst examples of dealing with power creep I've ever seen, and they're hung up on like not just gimmicks, because all card games have gimmicks for decks. It's kind of how it all boils down. So we get that. But Blizzard's gimmicks seem to all be kind of one note, and the gimmicks end up being really annoying to play against. It does not make the game fun to play at all.
Because like you'll reach a critical mass, and then you'll reach the point where you're unstoppable, and it's like, who's more unstoppable at that point? And then
a rush to who can get to their unstoppable point.
Yeah.
Right? It's there's no turnaround, there's no top deck.
Usually right when that transformation card drops.
Yes. Like Priest can play any version of any deck and win with very little effort. Like they can do almost anything up until like rank 10 higher. You can do almost anything and win, and it's usually a long game when you're against Priest, no matter what kind of deck they're running. It's a long game. And even when you get them down to 2 health, it doesn't matter, because if you don't kill them before they have a couple of cards in hand, and it doesn't take much, they just win. And you can't win. You physically can't beat them once they get into this point, and that's the dumbest part of it. And that's really frustrating. So, and that isn't just Priest. You know, it extends to other classes as well, and the gimmicks all seem to fall into similar categories. These OTKs, or these, draw cards until you have the ones that you need, the ones that you need to play out in like one hand, and you just win. It all kind of just filters into the same categories, and I think the most important thing here is not necessarily that they're gimmicks, because again, all card games, gimmicks, but it's how fun is Hearthstone to play? And personally, as somebody who doesn't net deck and builds their own and tries to, find ways to work around these gimmicks that people are using, because I know I'm never going to be like a fucking Masters level player. I'm not out to be Masters level.
You don't want to be the very best?
I'm not a Pokemon master or anything. I'm not an Ash Ketchum. I just want to be that bug catcher on Route whatever 6 and just fucking call it a day. For those people, and for the people that haven't dumped a bunch of money into the game to have all these card decks lined up for net decking to climb the ladder, the game is questionably entertaining. It will be entertaining for a stint, but then you just get slapped down so consistently, and the games are so long and drawn out oftentimes that it just becomes laborious. And I think that's probably one of the things holding Hearthstone back from being even bigger than it is right now. Maybe the dungeon run thing brings in and keeps the attention of casual people longer, and maybe they get more conversions that way. But I think Blizzard really needs to figure out how to tackle power creep. And I don't know if it's because you know what? I don't believe that.
But they have enough money that they can buy their way out of it.
Hearthstone's got a lot of money, but they also, Hearthstone's not been around as long as Magic the Gathering. We're not talking about power creep over the course of fucking decades here. We're talking about power creep over the course of not even a decade. And you're talking about a rotation of decks that's 2 decks plus standard pack at most. So, it's not that crazy. I think what's more likely here is that Blizzard makes good money on making these gimmick decks and having people want to have these gimmick decks to win. And this kind of plays into the loot box issues that have been going on now, where Hearthstone doesn't have a singles market, and they might eventually get hit by it, and then perhaps these kind of issues, their hand will be forced, perhaps at that point to do something about it. But lots of people still enjoy the game. I can't fault them for it. I think it's still the best virtual card game by miles. I mean, there's no one even remotely close. We'll see how the Magic the Gathering one happens. I doubt it's going to go anywhere, but we'll see how it happens. Hearthstone still crushes it, and I hope that it gets to a point someday where I can enjoy it more. Like, I've tried so many different ways of enjoying the game, and it all ends up being stunted by the same problems, which is what we're discussing right now, which is the gimmick power creep, long play, no retorts, just get fucked over and over again. And so it only goes so far. Have you played Hearthstone much at all in the last while?
Don't want to either confirm or deny that I have a metric fuck ton of cards on my phone and I'm playing it a lot.
I see.
I've been playing it a fair amount, but not religiously. I picked it up for like a couple weeks ago and just got addicted to it and then stopped recently. I'm gonna play a decent chunk for this expansion, see how it goes. It's just a good way to kill time on my phone. That's what I realized.
Yeah.
But again, like I've talked about it in the past, and I've talked about it with friends and stuff. Like my whole issue with Hearthstone is, mechanically it's simplistic compared to a lot of the other major card games. Even though they've added a bunch of cards, there's still some concerns I have about the complexity level of the game, where it's too complex in some parts and not complex in others, and you end up getting some really weird synergies, which I don't feel like they've balanced. That's where I feel like the balance issues have come in. It's because there's like emergent synergies in cards that they didn't really think about, and then you get some really crazy combos.
Which is kind of why having a broader set of cards can actually help keep power creep in check. Yeah. Because it allows for more options and for more variation in how any given game can play out. I've been kind of advocating for more than 30 cards in a deck now for a while.
That's why 60 card decks, because that reduces the RNG and top deck chance, because you're statistically less likely to pick things up. And there was a reason, very specifically, that Magic and most CCG games go. I get Hearthstone was trying to simplify things down into like a more consumable format, but when they brought, and again, by bringing the deck size down, it does shorten the matches. The matches go a lot quicker. But 30 card deck, it's a 1 in 30 chance of pulling a card, and if you have 2 of them, it's like, a 1 in 15 chance. It really
quick maths.
Yeah, and you exponentially reduce the complexity of a deck when you reduce the size of it, even by 1 card. Just the number of possibilities goes down dramatically, probabilistically. So.
Yeah, and you see that because that's how most every gimmick is exploited, is card draw. Yeah. You'll see that.
I'm going to draw a lot of cards.
Yeah, I'm just going to figure out a way to draw as many cards as I can in the early game to get to like turn 5, and then steamroll it because I've worked through half my deck or more. And once you have your combo, many of these combos are coincidentally 1 turn kills, or it puts you in a position where it's almost impossible to kill you, so you just win anyway. Like control warriors, they become unkillable. They end up with like 80 armor, and then they just draw you to death. And like, what are you gonna do about it? So, I hope that Hearthstone eventually adopts more than 30 cards, and I think you touched on it as well, where the complexity is at a level in which it's a bit of a hindrance because it allows too much of these, we'll call it high-level synergies.
Well, they have complexity where they have too much complexity where they don't need complexity, and they have too little complexity where they need complexity.
Yeah,
that's the issue.
Yeah. So I hope, and I'm sure that eventually it's going to have to happen. Well, I shouldn't even say that, really, because Hearthstone's made so much money now that really there's going to be a point in time where Blizzard just says, you know, when do we just, you know, separate ourselves from this venture? It's already done so much, and to put, you know, to double the deck size. Yeah, to double the deck size, like the work involved in doing that.
They'd rather just go and probably just develop a separate card game.
Exactly.
Hearthstone Plus.
Hearthstone Plus. Oh my God, how bad would that be? All right, well, it's time to move on to movies and TV and other random nonsense.
Huzzah!
Movies. I'm gonna be straight with you. I haven't really seen or heard tell of a heck of a lot because we're coming up at the end of the year and all anyone's talking about is Star Wars. However, there were a couple of points that came up this week that you've got listed, or one that you've got listed here, and then one that we talked about on Twitter already yesterday. And so let's start with that, I guess, is that there's rumors. Nothing confirmed, nothing denied. Classic good old-fashioned rumor that Quentin Tarantino might hop on board and do some stuff with Star Trek.
So, actually, I'm going to let you talk about that first before I jump in, unless you want me to jump in.
So that was with JJ's rumor, right? Like to work alongside JJ on a project.
I don't want him to work alongside JJ, and I can explain why.
Yeah. So I don't know how I feel about this in general. I don't love or hate Quentin Tarantino movies. I'm so indifferent about Quentin Tarantino movies. I think they're all very well done from a technical standpoint, and they all have that quirky Tarantino flair, and I think sometimes that works for me and it will make me enjoy the movie, and other times it doesn't work for me and it makes the movie a less of a pleasing experience. So to this point, Tarantino's pretty much kind of stayed within his own wheelhouse and not touched, to my knowledge, much of
franchise work.
Franchise-related work. So I don't know how well Tarantino's style meshes with Star Trek. But maybe Star Trek needs something new to be injected to freshen it up a bit. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. Like, I don't want to say that Quentin Tarantino is overrated, but there's a chance that Quentin Tarantino is slightly overrated. Well, I guess I'm lucky that Jeff isn't here this week, because we would have just listened to an hour-plus sermon.
He would have ripped you a new one and bent you over and then slapped you silly. And
yeah, like a sermon on Quentin Tarantino. And that's what I'm saying.
Between you two.
I don't know if I feel like that's the case, but it's possible. I'm just indifferent.
I'm going to try to sell you on this, all right?
Okay.
In a specific way, right?
Give her.
So, Star Trek as a franchise has been kind of languishing in all respects, TV, whatever. They haven't had much media out, right? Now, the JJ verse and everything, I like the movies. They're good action movies. They're good for getting people in the theaters, and that's great. Keep doing those, right? Keep the JJ verse going on. Keep that awesome. Now, here's the thing. Contrary to what people think, Star Trek has so much more lore to pull from than like even franchises like Star Wars. There's 4 or 5 different seasons or series of Star Trek of like 9 seasons. There's tons of stuff that can be explored, tons of areas that can happen, right? And Paramount's got all these movie rights, right? And they can do a lot of things with it. Now, so what I'm saying is take the Star Wars route. you can't put a Star Trek movie out every year with the main characters. Like, it's just too difficult. But there's so much stuff you can explore, and you can take different approaches to the franchise. You can have other directors come in and do side stories that have
So
no
we're doing the
impact.
Star Wars shtick.
But not like, I'm not talking like where you have main characters Rogue One, but there's a lot of stories, and here's where a director like Quentin Tarantino can come in, right? Tarantino touches on some dark stuff, but he's also much more heavy on like the dialogue heavy stuff or the interactions between characters, right? Where things aren't necessarily perfect. And then Star Trek's kind of one of those franchises where things are usually have that like gloss sheen of things being awesome all the time, where there can be problems and there's some conflict, but overall it's like smoothed over. So the picture you posted on Twitter actually kind of set this off in my head, right? I know Tarantino was talking about how you can take certain episodes that have really good storytelling, like, you know, City on the Edge of Forever or whatever it was called. And that's like a good plot that you can, you know, with little effort, you can extend out and explore. The one I would think Tarantino would be extremely well suited for is that story that we already know how it ends. The Khitomer Massacre and the Loss of the Enterprise C. Right?
Okay.
You know it has kind of a dark ending, but you know there's positive things that come out of it. They've alluded to kind of stuff that happened in TNG and other stuff, like what happened to the ship, what was going on. And, you know, through other parts of the series, you kind of know there's like a lot of intrigue in that between the Klingons, the Romulans, you know, War's family, you know, the Enterprise C, all of that. I feel like Tarantino, especially with building out the crew of the Enterprise C, which again, no one has really touched on, right, throughout lore, but it's something that Tarantino could flesh out real well in a feature film format. It's got a definitive start, definitive end. There's plenty of avenues for dialogue. You got a Starfleet ship that knows it's like walking in to like, you know, a dangerous situation. They're probably not going to survive, and, you know, all of whatever goes on there. There's some compelling storylines, like how does the crew hold up? What dialogue can go on? You know, people can be at each other's throat while things are falling apart. You know, all of that stuff could be very compellingly told in that window for that event. And I feel like a director like Tarantino could tell that story real well, could tell it artistically. It gives Paramount an out if it doesn't work, but it also gives Paramount, and like Jeff was saying in our little Twitter arguments back and forth, Paramount bringing in someone like that will give Star Trek a much wider, you know, berth to a lot more people, because there's a ton of Tarantino fans also. There's a ton of Star Trek fans, and not all of them overlap.
No.
But if Tarantino says, hey, I'm doing a Star Trek movie, and, you know, and they hype it up that way, I guarantee you're going to get a lot of other people into the theaters. You know, it'll expose Star Trek to a lot of other people. And it's kind of gotten to the point where Star Trek needs to kind of change its storytelling tact a little bit. It can still stay true. And with Tarantino's method of dialogue and his exposition and the way he tells stories, you could tell a pretty kick-ass Star Trek story. I would think, you know, you can get the dialogue down and all that.
No, I don't disagree. I do struggle. I won't not say that I struggle to see the mesh there.
It depends on the story, I would say. Like, I don't see him doing like a JJ verse type of movie. It just wouldn't work.
Well, no, but and I wouldn't expect it to go that route either. But at the same time, the most exciting thing about it for me would have been the fact that it would be such a dramatically different take on the universe that at the very least you're getting something incredibly new versus a just kind of like we've been getting with the newer movies, or just modernized takes on the the original series or whatever else. So that's what I'm most interested in. If it did happen, would just be seeing somebody have that has such a drastically different in general.
It'd be hard to see a Star Trek movie with everyone exploding in clouds of blood.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. It's still just rumor. It's still just rumor.
I doubt anything's gonna happen. It's probably just a rumor.
Yeah, but at the same time, Quentin said some kind of all over the stuff things in the last couple of years with how he wants to do movies. He said he was gonna be done after 10. So, who knows? Maybe that just means he's done coming up with his own stuff at 10, and he just wants to go on and do other things.
Has his 9th movie been announced yet?
I don't know. I don't know. Jeff would probably be the one person on the planet that would be able to rattle that off immediately. But yeah, I'm not.
Jeff.
I'm not entirely sure.
Jeff, the Pebble Johnston.
Yes, the Pebble. What else did you have listed here? Brian Singer?
Yes, he got fired from the Bohemian Rhapsody movie.
What? Okay, first of all, explain to me what the Bohemian Rhapsody movie is, other than 45 seconds of bliss in the 1990s cult classic Wayne's World.
It's the biopic of Freddie Mercury and Queen.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was happening.
Huh.
Didn't even know it was I mean, that makes a lot of sense why it's called Bohemian Rhapsody, but I had no idea that they were doing that. Fantastic. Okay. So why did he get removed from the project? Did he touch little boys too? Like what happened here?
I'm looking into that right now. They did pick up a new director. They picked Dexter Fletcher to replace him.
Okay.
Who's done things like he has done Eddie and Eagle, Wild Bill, and he's got acting credits on Kick-Ass and Stardust.
Well, Eddie and the Eagle wasn't terrible.
Yeah, this is the one we actually talked about this movie a little while back. It's got Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, no, that makes Now that you say that, I do recall having talked about it.
All right. So from the sound of it, Singer had to take a break because one of his parents has been pretty ill. And he's been trying to get that sorted out. So he was out in and out trying to do some stuff, and then he pretty much came out and said Fox has been refusing to give him any time off to deal with a sick family member that's like really important. And then Fox came out a couple hours later and said, "Yeah, you're fired."
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So not diddling boys, apparently.
Well, that's a fresh take on getting fired in Hollywood recently. So there's that. But yeah, I mean, I have to. I'm not even really if it's a biopic, I'm not overly concerned about the breadth of directing. You know, whatever. I think it's more important that they were a massive fan of Queen and Freddie, because they're going to put so much more effort into making it a properly good project. So we'll see how it all pans out. I'd be super interested in watching that. I still think that Freddie's probably the greatest frontman to have ever lived in music. So totally down. Is there a date for that, or is it still just kind of?
No, not from what I know.
Well, outside of that, you've got such random stuff listed here.
I just started throwing down things.
I know. I like it.
Nothing going on.
I like it.
Like, what are we doing today?
I had no idea what was going to happen.
And boom.
I was out all day, and I was like, I wonder if this is going to be the one week that Panic hasn't looked at shit. So just
I didn't. I got home and I was like, I hope Adam's looked at shit.
Yeah. Oh, that happened. Hey, look, we're an hour and 42 minutes deep. We've done it.
Due out December 25th, 2018. So next year.
Okay, next year.
So 1 year.
Not bad. Skyrim's being ported to vinyl and nobody cares.
Yeah. Yeah, but apparently for Singer, they're saying him being fired for absences was not the main reason. Apparently, reading this article, it's pretty much saying that lead actors and stuff were saying that he's super toxic and wasn't really professional.
Oh, get wrecked.
That's where they can go. So, we'll see how that goes.
I'm going to bring it back to games just briefly.
Oh, God.
Just briefly. Nothing major. Just something I found, just a giggle. As we discussed earlier on, I've been playing a lot of Oblivion. And so obviously my chat's been filled with lots of what's your favorite Elder Scrolls game, and, blah, 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 blah. And so I discovered, apparently somebody had linked it, that some crazy fool has been periodically, for shits and giggles, porting bits and pieces of Skyrim to the 3DS, and there was a little video of Whiterun that had a bunch of the assets put in, no actors or anything like that, just assets, and just 30 FPS, not bad, I was kind of impressed. I think he did it through Unity or something. I can't remember how it all happened, but yeah, it was kind of funny to look at. And it was just like in my mind, I was thinking, you know what? I bet you they already tried this. You gotta believe that somebody at some point was like, man, we should get Skyrim on the 3DS. But I don't think that's ever gonna happen. Too much for the little 3DS to handle. I could see Morrowind being, runnable on a 3DS, but I don't think you're ever gonna get Skyrim. Not that we need it. We've got Skyrim on enough stuff.
Enough place.
Yeah, we got Skyrim in enough places. Oh yeah, that's another good one. Bring it back to games. Again, here's Felio Bolton chat just brought to my attention. I've forgotten about this. Mega Man.
Oh, 11's coming out on the Switch and whatever, right? And all
there's
that
11, and there's also like the Mega Man X series.
They're doing the pre-release stuff.
Yeah, so they announced this because this is like what the 20th anniversary, 30th.
30th sounds
30th.
Right, but it's probably 20th. I don't think Mega Man came out as one.
It's one or the other. Can't remember. But it was all based around that, and they announced it just kind of out of nowhere. And I think there's some gameplay and stuff for it as well. And I think I saw like little bits of what I think was 11. But I guess I'll ask you real quick your opinion. Do you think Mega Man works now?
I mean, it's a classic platformer. It all depends on how they do it and how they make it. As long as they don't try to go against the original style. Anytime they try, the only game that's really made the transition platformer-wise to 3D, I would say, was probably Mario. Most of the other 2D platformers, when they go into 3 space, doesn't really work that well. Look at Sonic. Metroid's been okay, but once they, if they kind of do like a hybrid 2D, 3D approach where they keep the old platforming intact, it holds up a lot better.
Yeah, the way I think I talked about it on stream the other day was when somebody brought it up. Was I think Mega Man still works, but you have to target a pretty specific community with it. I don't think you can make it necessarily just kind of like every other 2D platformer, platform shooter that exists. I think you have to have an element of difficulty there to attract people, and I think that you need to use the difficulty to drive people on Twitch to play it, to drive sales. Not Boshy levels of difficulty, obviously, or some shit, but you know what I mean. It's a Mega Man game. Mega Man's associated with difficulty, and Cuphead did really well, despite the fact it had no name behind it previously, and it is not an easy game. And they sold a great number of copies of that, and Twitch definitely helped Cuphead out significantly.
This trailer looks straight fire though for Mega Man 11.
Yeah,
I can see you guys playing this on stream.
Yeah, so I mean, that's where I hope they go with it. Modernize it a bit, maybe with checkpoints and stuff.
Looks pretty modernized.
With checkpoints and stuff, but make it more difficult, I guess. The trade-off there. Instead of being like a one and done scenario. But yeah, I'm happy that Mega Man's still around. It pleases me that they're going back and giving it a shot. Mighty Number 9 was a massive.
Oh, that just bombed out. It was so they didn't really make it.
No,
where they wanted to.
So I'm definitely pleased that they're bringing it back, and I hope it does well. We're gonna find out. I don't know if they had a release. I think they probably announced a release date for that stuff, but I don't know when. I imagine it's probably next year sometime, spread out over the year.
No, it doesn't really say when it's coming out. Yeah, so I don't see anything just yet, so they're probably just going to keep it on the simmer for a while.
Yeah. I imagine probably, late next year or throughout the year, because they have a couple of titles that they're working on for it, so there'll be a staggered release of some kind. We'll keep tabs on it. Let's head on over into tech support and answer some questions, because I just put this up
while the podcast was going.
While the podcast was going.
We got any questions?
But we got questions here. Not a problem. Tech support, guys, for those of you who don't know, $10 and higher on patreon.com/technicalalpha nets you the ability to ask us questions on a weekly basis. And we pick a couple to answer at the end of each podcast. It's pretty much how it works.
I got one ready. It's actually
Boom.
on topic.
Hit me up with it. What is it?
This one's from RK Mira. He has a current $10 pledge, lifetime support. $39, isn't it?
Get that microphone in your face, you filthy plebeian.
I'm sorry. I don't do this for a living like you. This is from RK Emera or Archimera. He's a $10 pledge, $39 lifetime supporter.
RKO out of nowhere.
RKO out of nowhere. In the spirit of failed project management, what's the worst team project you've ever had to work on where your teammates, coworkers completely drop the ball? For you, Adam, I'm also going to include college experience with group projects.
Mine actually happened outside of college.
Oh.
In the whopping year that I spent in the corporate world before this whole content creation thing kind of replaced my need to pencil push. So I worked. I was brought in as a Met leave cover for a Met leave cover. They replaced a woman as or not replaced, but they had somebody come in because their original person was on maternity leave, and they replaced her with a woman who coincidentally got pregnant, and before the other woman was back from maternity leave, needed to go on maternity leave herself. So they brought in the only person that couldn't possibly get pregnant, a 22-year-old male, and plugged them in. That was me. And they were hot in the midst of completely building a new website, as well as a gold exchange website on the side, while still kind of, maintaining their existing website. And I was taking place as basically the online marketing coordinator. And so I served underneath the marketing manager, and I worked alongside, they had a small team of graphic designers and whatnot. And I had to, with literally zero context, the manager didn't really provide me with any information. The second day I was at the job, I was sent off-site to the company that was building the website for us, and with zero context, I was handed a file folder, no idea what was in it, and they sent me off to this place to have this meeting, and it was what time it was the last signing off on before the finalization of the feature set for the site. It was that meeting. So I had no context. I had no idea where the website was, where it was going, what was happening, or anything. They gave me this file folder. They said, go for it. This was 20.
No, that was a joke. What year?
Yeah, but yes, it was stupid that it was happening. So I just sent off and just go handle it. I was like, all right, okay, good. So go off, and I was in this meeting. I'm like, they're talking about new shit, and I'm reading what's in the file folder, trying to figure out, what it is I'm supposed to be being okay with or whatever. That gets signed off. So I had no idea. I was like, you know what? Sure. This all looks like it's functional. I'm sure it will be fine. Cool. I had to train. So this is a brand new website. So their website previously was run with Cold Fusion.
Oh.
And I was operating that. I was operating that with like 4,000 products on the website, and I had to update with Cold Fusion manually, and it was not fun. It's not fun. So there, you can guess at how old the equipment in this building was. Like, it was archaic. And they had set me up to do all of this shit that just happened, but I had to train a 55-year-old man who had almost zero computer experience. Like, and I mean the where's the power button type, I don't know how to log in. Oops, I lost this file. Like, that's the kind of guy I was dealing with. I had to train him in how to, on a computer that was as old as I am, so it barely booted up, he had to be able to operate the entire back end of the Gold Exchange website by himself on this computer from like 1998 with zero computer skills. I had to, the management didn't exist, is what I'm trying to say here. There was zero project management. I came in on a Met leave, and they just fucking tossed me in there, and they were like, all right, no pressure, but the corporate website's being rebuilt, and we got this other website going, and we need to train this guy over here, and you've got like 7 days. Have fun. And so I was like band-aiding old computer parts into the new computer to try and make it so it could at least turn on inside of an hour. And I had to train this guy to do anything. And I had to I wrote a manual for him so that he knew how to log into the back end of the Gold Exchange website so that he could manage it and shit. And it was just a complete shit show from top to bottom. And what made it worse was that despite the fact that they gave me all these things to do, I had almost zero autonomy. So I still had to go through, not even the project manager, but I had to go through the president of the company for anything that I was doing. And if it wasn't what he thought was the right way, I had to go back and redo everything that I already had done. They gave me this tiny window of time, which means I had to just kind of do whatever the fuck needs to be done. And then I had to retcon half the shit that I did because he was like, no, that's not going to work here. It's not going to work for us. And so I had to go back and do it all over again. So it was a complete shit show. We pulled it off. They're still using the website now. It's beautiful. It runs well. But it was the craziest. It was the craziest experience I've ever had, and I'm happy I don't have to do that again.
I've got two. One is where I was the project manager, and the other is where I was not the project manager.
Oh boy!
I'm gonna start with the one where I was not the project manager.
Okay.
So this was for an actual professional organization, not like a small side gig or anything. And I was brought in specifically to do QA work, effectively developers would deliver code, I would put it together and put it onto the system, and then I would test it, and then if everything was good, I would release it. That was what I was hired for. Great. There for a couple of weeks, got the lay of the land, figure out what's going on. Sweet. We get right before the release, and I start finding some really weird problems and gaps and bugs, so I start reporting them. And literally the day before we're supposed to go live, they're like, hey, we're actually going to stall the release like a month or two, and we have to re-architect some pieces of it. I'm like, okay. We get into the re-architecting process. They're like, hey, Tabin, what are the requirements? And I'm kind of looking at him like, what do you mean, what are the requirements? Like, you found the bug, so you need to explain. I'm like, I just got here 2 months ago, man. All right. I sit down with the BAPM hybrid role, and we sit down and we hash out, the gaps I found and what I was told it was supposed to be. Just like hearsay my part, and we start putting it together. Great. The developers go back, they deliver more stuff. We go through the whole cycle again for another month, right? We get towards the end, they're like, oh, hey, this actually isn't going to work. We got to push the release another month.
Oh, no.
We got to re-architect even more of the system now.
Oh,
we got to build some new stuff and integrate all this other stuff that people want now. I'm like, all right. Oh, yeah, by the way, these 3 people are moving on to other things, and we're going to replace them with some new guys, and we need you to train them too. I'm like, all right, great. I train them all up. They re-architect the next thing. They're like, hey, Tabin, where's the design doc for this? I'm like, what do you mean, where's the design doc for this thing? Thought you wrote it up. He's like, no, I thought you did. I'm like, I'm not the requirements guy on this. He's like, all right, we'll get you a design doc. I'm like, thanks.
Good. Go do your work.
Repeat. Happens again. Another 2 months go by.
Oh, my God.
Now, this cycle continues. We re-architect the system, and I've re-architected, tested, and deployed this thing 5, 6, 7 times to the thing.
Oh,
I've ended up building out and treading new territory where no one has been before for building out this. And throughout this time, every re-architect, we lose a couple more people. Within a year, everyone who was on the team when I started is gone. Me and one developer are the senior people on this project.
That turnover.
Project managers, technical architects, business analysts, developers, they've like left the firm. They're like, we can't get away from the project fast enough. And then they're like, hey, Tabin, do you want to do that? And I'm like, yeah, promote me, man. I'm totally willing to take this on. You know, but you got to promote me, give me the raise, give me the title, and, you know, give me some people so we can work on the project. Like, oh, no, we can't promote you right now. You haven't been at the firm long enough. And I'm like, okay. And then I transferred to another team, right? Now, they tried to pitch my position to other people to take the role at the level I was at, and they did not fill it for 9 months.
Oh, my Lord.
Until the guy who was my former boss who left to go somewhere else wanted to come back, and he took my job at his old level. And that was the only way he would take the job. And this was like 9 months after I'm off the project. He messages me. He's like, hey, do you have documentation? Can you explain to me where everything is? I'm like, what do you mean, where's the documentation and where everything is?
All right, what's your other example?
This one you've heard me bitch and rant and moan about, the Aggressive Comics website.
Oh, the web. Oh, fuck that whole thing.
That one was scheduled. Like we had our designers do the like artwork almost similar to what Nikki did for the Tech Alpha site, pixel perfect for all the things. I wrote requirement specifications based on talking to all the users and everything. And we went and we like sourced out the project to 3 different development firms. You know, and I'm like, look, we have the India team, which came because my boss is like, I want the cheapest thing. I'm like, well, we got India. They'll do it for like $3,000. But honestly, I've worked with Indian development teams, and you know, for our stuff, it's not going to be great. Like, there's probably going to be problems. And then there was a European firm and an American firm. European firm, I'm like, you know what? This is a reasonable price. Let's go with them. It's only like $7 or $8,000, but they'll do everything we want, custom, you know, for the custom WordPress stuff. And they'll put it together, and you know, we'll you know, we won't have to do too much work. It'll be pretty turnkey. The U.S. firm was like $12,000. My boss is like, Tabin, I have faith in you. We're gonna go with the India design firm.
Oh my God!
I'm like,
no.
why, man? He's like, look, they promised 4 weeks and $3,000. That's awesome. The European guys are gonna take 8 weeks. I'm like, man. Come on, don't cheap out on me. You know, this is the website you're going to be using for years.
Oh, my God.
Goes and pays the Indian design firm. We have our meeting, and they say, you know what? 4 weeks. We can have this done.
4 weeks?
And I'm like, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, you know, I want a checkpoint in 2 weeks. You know, if there's any issues, you know, we can discuss it. We can have, you know, discussions on, you know, any issues. I think, yes, sir, we understand completely. 2-week checkpoint. All right, so I'm going over it. You know, the demo page looks all right. You know, they're like, we're going to implement like the underlying functionality in the next 2 weeks. But do you like? I'm like, yeah, it looks. You know, the look and feel is fine. All that great. I'm not going to go into detail, but now whenever people bring up this project, I get the 1,000-yard stare, and I kind of just remember things.
You get the Vietnam flashbacks.
This site took almost 1.5 years to get delivered.
That's
from
so
a 4-week
ridiculous.
estimate.
That's so
like,
it's so
they delivered
insane.
the final site, and the final site looked exactly like what we pitched them. Exactly like what we pitched them.
But it took over a year.
Oh no! Like when they delivered in like 5 or 6 weeks, it looked exactly like what we wanted until you started clicking buttons.
Oh. Well, that's kind of great that you can make it look the same, but
the moment we started clicking buttons, things got weird. And we're like, hey, this doesn't even meet requirements, man. Like, what the hell's going on here? And they're like, oh, we didn't understand your requirement. We will fix. And at this point, I'm having meetings with them like every week. And after a year, I'm like, you guys are wasting so much of my time.
Holy
I was like
crap.
It was just like ridiculous.
Just the amount of time that could have been saved just spending the extra money.
And whenever there's an issue, whenever there's an issue with the website stuff we actually ended up taking the site from them, not done, and taking it back in-house and coding it ourselves, which took a while, which is what we wanted to avoid doing in the first place. And then we ended up redesigning it completely afterwards. We're like, fuck this crap. The code's just too trash.
Oh my!
And I told him, I'm like, I warned you, man. You cheaped out, and look at what you did. This is why my beard is gray.
It's absolutely awful. That's just, well, I mean, at the same time, you know, I guess in the grand scheme of things,
Indian design firms.
Yeah,
for
no, well, yeah. There's your cautionary tale. Topical one for this time of year, I guess. Comes in from Jason Lynch. $10 current, 70 lifetime. Thank you, Jason. So since it's that time of year, let's settle the age-old debate. What do you atop a Christmas tree with, a star or an angel? Do you have preference?
I look like I celebrate Christmas?
You better.
Don't.
Terrible.
One, I'm Muslim. I would love to celebrate Christmas, but two, I don't think I've ever actually gotten like a Christmas gift. Like other than I think I mentioned this last year. Like I had mentioned to someone, like I never really got a Christmas gift ever. Like it's just, it's not like something I mind. Like it's just something my family never did. And some random guy on Twitch is like, "Yo, what's your battle net? I'm gonna send you." He sent me like a Christmas gift. I'm like, okay.
The most wonderful time of the. I'm a star guy personally. I'm not an angel. We had an angel that we would set up at home on a writing
Christmas gifts.
Yeah, like on a writing desk. But the tree, always a star.
It's always a star.
Always a star.
Is it the pentagram or like?
Yes, it's the pentagram.
I don't know how you roll, Adam.
We actually also hang our crosses upside down for the season as well. Put lights on them. It's great. You know, the nice little rotating lights around it. Just really nice kind of Las Vegas effect.
I'll just put that on top of the tree right there.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you know, that's a very short tree before you need to start worrying about the size of the shield.
Yeah.
I feel like.
We'll just put the shield right at the top. Just make sure it's sturdy enough to not tip.
Always a star. Always need to see that. It just looks better to me. Angel on top always looks so weird to me. It just didn't look like it fit right. So, shout outs to all those using a star. I'll do one more question here.
I'm gonna do this one.
What?
I'm gonna do this one.
Okay, what do you got?
I'm going with Sergeant Dragon, bro.
Okay. Oh,
this one's,
man.
Yeah, man. This is important. I need to know this about you.
Okay.
What the best brand of peanut butter, and crunchy or creamy?
Well,
to put your peanut butter on.
Since we are in totally different countries, the brands of peanut butter that we are going to enjoy are totally different.
It's irrelevant.
But here, I'll say whether crunchy or creamy first. I go through periods of both, actually. Where sometimes, and it's not like short spurts, it's months long. So there will be like a period where I just want crunchy peanut butter on everything, and so I'll buy crunchy peanut butter. And then there's another period where I will buy nothing but smooth peanut butter. I'm currently in a smooth peanut butter phase.
You smooth motherfucker.
Yeah. No, Kraft peanut butter is what I buy 99% of the time here is Kraft peanut butter, crunchy or creamy, doesn't much matter. The reason why I tend to sometimes avoid the creamy peanut butter here, if it's not like not organic but natural peanut butter, is just the amount of icing sugar in it. I just try to avoid it, although it is nice and convenient to not have to stir your peanut butter.
Someone in chat just said crunchy, it's chunky. I'm like, all right, bro. First of all, there is actually a difference.
There is
a third type. There is a third type.
There is.
There's crunchy, chunky, and creamy. Crunchy, you'll have your peanuts like broken down into a bunch of little pieces, and it'll be spread much more evenly through. Chunky, you'll have entire nuts or pieces of nut, like larger pieces of nuts, less homogeneously through the peanut butter.
It's like grades of sandpaper.
Yes.
40 grit peanut butter.
And then creamy is like butter.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm not a creamy guy. I'm a very much a crunchy or even chunky. You know what? Bring on the texture.
Okay.
I like that crunch.
What do you put it on though? What are your applications for peanut butter?
Only in peanut butter cups or on a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Okay.
I don't put peanut butter on other things.
That explains why you are into the category that you are.
I'm not a peanut butter and banana guy. I am not a peanut butter and on weird things. If you put peanut butter on weird things and hand it to me, I'm gonna backhand you. Peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
I will put, like ketchup, I will put peanut butter on damn near anything. I just anything.
Yeah, I had that Daryl's peanut butter burger and I was left wanting.
Did you even get the peanut? I thought you got a different burger than the peanut butter burger.
I got the peanut butter burger because you were hyping it up, and then Brian and I were like, I would have rather gone with the spicy one.
Yeah, well, I was hyping it up because I enjoy it. But if you told
you like smooth peanut butter, and I'm like, now this makes sense to me why Adam would hype this up.
Well, first of all, the peanut butter they use on the burger isn't smooth, so get that shit out of here. No, it's not. It's crunchy. But step 2 to that equation of the if I had known previously that the only things you put peanut butter on was sandwiches and other peanut butter, then I wouldn't be then I would not have suggested the peanut butter burger. You have to like peanut butter for that to work.
I like peanut butter.
Well, you have to like you like peanut butter. That's like saying I like fucking Queen, but I only can name you Bohemian Rhapsody. Like you
I like ice cream, and you don't see me slapping ice cream on everything.
Well, that doesn't. But the applications in which you use ice cream in might be more limited than somebody else's. If you're gonna put peanut butter on a burger, you need to have a pretty broad range of where you're going to put your peanut butter. You can't just be limited to peanut butter sandwiches and Reese's peanut butter cups. Like that shit's not going to go over well for you at all.
And in terms of brand, I go with what Choosy Moms choose, and that's Jif.
That's when we have Jif here as well. And so yeah, I mean, of my all the American friends I have, Jif seems to be the go-to most of the time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I am a choosy mom.
Yeah. Fuck. But I put peanut butter on damn near anything. I mean, I'm a peanut butter banana, peanut butter apple, peanut butter burger, peanut butter cups for sure. Although they changed the formula of that, and I'm not a big enough fan of Reese's peanut butter cups anymore as I used to. But peanut butter on damn near anything. Peanut butter on ice cream. You take peanut butter and put it on vanilla ice cream. Delicious. Put peanut butter on fucking anything. That's pretty much where I'm at with that. I'm not even a big peanut butter and jelly sandwich guy. I'll just make a peanut butter sandwich.
I do that too. I'll have just peanut butter.
Like I don't need the jam or the jelly. I don't need that. Just give me the peanut butter.
It depends. Like if I want something that's not going to completely dry my mouth out, I'll usually throw something else in there because the jelly helps. Like
you want to know what the goat is? The goat.
What's the goat?
Butter first, then peanut butter, then banana, then honey. Sandwich, life-changing experience.
Not the banana on peanut butter guy.
Life-changing experience. Take the banana out, peanut butter, butter, honey, also still a life-changing experience.
I'll give that a go this winter.
Give it a go. I'm telling you. And use your chunky or whatever because it'll be great. It'll be whatever. It'll replace the banana for texture and just go wild with it. It is very, very, very tasty. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now that we've tackled some of the most important issues, complex issues in society today, like which version of peanut butter do you eat, we're going to call it a show there. We're going to wrap it up. Another episode of Technical Alpha in the books, the two-man show, running wild at 2 hours, 13 minutes, and 6 seconds. Not bad. Not bad at all. Let's do a quick shout-out to our Patreon producers who continue to put food in our mouths and hopefully continue to after Patreon tries to take food from theirs. Jetrix, Postal Panda, Jamaican Jazz, Adam B, Toad of Steel, Naily, Derek P, Frysy, Ice Wolfie, Jorbach, Lars M, Matthew W, and Xavier A. All of you legends. And so is basically everyone else on our Patreon page supporting us the way that you do. Because again, 1 in 4 listeners. It's a crazy ratio. I'm loving it. You're going to be getting your stuff soon. Panic has actually been sending stuff. Like, there's how many packages? Like 500?
I have to pack 500 boxes.
There's a
And
lot
for
of
labels,
boxes.
yeah. I'm just trying to get them all packed because I have to do all the labels at once. So like
Yes.
it's just really tedious to do like some labels and some packages. So like I'm packing everything up. My hallway is like just filling up with boxes.
Lined with boxes. So when you start receiving it, please
send us pictures.
Send us pictures. Hit us up on Twitter. Hit us up on Facebook, Patreon, wherever you want to send us those pictures. We'd love to see them because they're going to be en route. We will be back next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Thank you once again for listening. You can check us out, technicalalpha.audio, if you want to get more information on the podcast. If this is maybe your first time listening, shout outs to anyone and everyone that rates us on iTunes because it really does go a long way. And let somebody that you know about Technical Alpha if you think it's something they'd be into. We'd appreciate that help in terms of growing the podcast as well. And until next week, do us a favor. Have a good one. And we will see you next time. And until we do see you, peace. Panic, you look like you want to say something.
Not bad, Jeff.
Oh, we just lost all of our Patreon users.
Worth.
All of them.